Solve the following exponential equations. Round the final answer to the nearest thousandth, which is 3 decimal places, by the way. Show a work that leads to your solution. Suggestion: check your answer by plugging in the value of x to make sure that the equation works. But what we're doing on these types of problems here, because the variable is an exponent, is we're going to put a logarithm in. And put log in for both sides there. So it's going to be log of 5 to the x equals log of 79. Second step, we're going to take that x and we're going to write it out in front. We're going to use that power property of logarithms. So this is going to be x log 5 equals log of 79. Well, we want to figure out what x is, and this is x times the log of 5, so we're going to divide both sides by log of 5. And what happens here is that the log of 5's cancel out, so now we're left with x, and then we type it into our calculator. Log of 79, close the parentheses, divided by log of 5, gives us that decimal. And as I move this in here on screen for a minute, here what's going to happen is we're looking at the 8 to determine what to do to the 4. Because 8 is 5 or higher, we're going to get 2.715. We had to round that 4 to a 5. Letter B. We want to solve for x, and again, x is the variable, so what we have to do is we need to isolate before we can solve this problem. In other words, what's going to happen is we're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and we get e to the x equals 59. Now, what happens is, because there's an e in there, I'm going to use the natural logarithm instead of the log logarithm, but it's going to be ln is what we're going to put in on both sides, because our variable is an exponent. So this is the natural log of e to the x equals the natural log of 59. Then we're going to use our power property once again. What that means is we're going to take this x and we're going to write it out in front. So now we have x natural log of e equals natural log of 59. And just like the previous problem, it's x times the natural log of e. So we're going to divide by the natural log of e. And when we do that, we're just going to type it in. So the natural log of e's cancel out. And what we have, natural log of 59, close the parentheses, divided by natural log of e, gives us this value. And once again, we have to round to the nearest thousandth, so we're going to look at this 5 here. But since it's 5, we're going to round that second 7 up to an 8, and we get 4.078. Going to erase this stuff so that we have room for part C here. I'll have to delete this as well. But now when we look at letter C, I'm going to just scoot this over so we can see it. Same idea. Our variable is an exponent. We're going to have to put in a logarithm. We put in a log on both sides, and we get log of 2 to the 3x equals log of 131. We're going to take that value of 3x, and we're going to write it out in front. So this is going to become 3x log 2 equals log of 131. it's 3x times log of 2, so we're going to divide by log of 2. When we divide by log of 2, we're still going to be left with, on this left side, 3x. We're going to type in log of 131, close the parentheses, divided by log of 2. And when we see this number here again, what we're looking at is we're looking at the 4. And because 4 is less than 5, we're going to leave that 3 alone. So we get 7.033, and I kind of got ahead of myself there because I want to leave that number in the calculator, but we're not done because it's 3x. So leave that number in your calculator. To finish this problem, we're going to divide both sides by 3, but don't divide the number that I have up there on the board. Take the number that's in your calculator and divide it by 3. And now is really when we want to round this problem. And what we end up with is we end up with 2.344 because the third 4 in here is less than 5. And that's going to determine what happens to that second 4 there. We're going to keep it as a 4 because the number was 5 or less. Letter D. E to the x over 6 equals 870. Still the same idea as the previous A, B, and C. We're going to put a logarithm in. In fact, I'm going to use the natural log because it's an E. If you like LOG, use LOG every single time. It's the natural log of E to the x over 6 equals the natural log of 870. And we're going to use the power property, which says that we're going to take this value, x over 6, we're going to write it out in front. So it's x over 6 times the natural log of E equals the natural log of 870. And again, following the same pattern, it's x over 6 times the natural log of E, so we're going to divide by the natural log of E. And that's what we're going to type in our calculator. So we pull up our calculator. Natural log of 870, close the parentheses, divided by natural log of E, which is second in the division. I don't think I said that on that last problem. The division bar will get you the E. And once again, we're not going to be completely done. I'm going to write down 6.768, but leave that number in your calculator. 6.768, and over here it equals x divided by 6. But what has to happen now is we want to solve for x. So we're going to multiply this side of the equation by 6. We're going to multiply this number that's in our calculator by 6. And that's going to give us our value of x. Multiply by 6. And this is where we're going to round. Again, rounding to the nearest thousand. Well, we're looking at the 9 to determine what to do to the 0. And we're going to get 40.611. So once again, we're solving these exponential equations, and the key is to isolate. And eventually we're going to have to use a logarithm on this one. It's 3 times 10 to the x. So our first step is going to be to divide by 3. When we divide by 3, we get 10 to the x equals, and let's type that in our calculator here, 1620 divided by 3. And luckily enough, it gives us 540, which is a nice enough number to work with. Once we get this set up the way it needs to be, then in order to solve this, we have to use a logarithm because the exponent in here is the variable. So we're going to put an log in on both sides. We get log of 10 to the x equals log of 540. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use our power property. And our power property says we're going to take this value of x and we're going to write it out in front. So now, what we end up with is we end up with x log 10 equals log of 540. I just want to go back and look at the problem here for a second, but I'm good. We want to figure out what x equals. Well, it's x times log of 10. So we're going to divide by log of 10 here. And we're going to divide by log of 10 here. And what that's going to require us to do is it's going to require us to type this in the calculator. I'm going to take log of 540, close the parentheses, divided by log of 10, and we press enter. Our directions remind us that we want to round to the nearest thousand, which is 3 decimal places. So when we look at this number down here, we're going to look at this 3 to determine what to do to that 2. We end up with 2.732 because the 3 that we looked at was 5 or less. Problem 5F. Once again, the key to solving this problem is we need to isolate the variable as much as possible. And this problem says -4 times 6 to the 2x equals -328. When we start with our isolation, we're going to divide by -4. Over here, the -4's cancel out, and we've got 6 to the 2x equals, and let's type it in. -328 divided by -4 gives us 82. But yet again, like all 6 of these parts on problem number 5, we have a variable that's an exponent. And when we have a variable that's an exponent, we need to put in a logarithm. So this is going to be log of 6 to the 2x. And this is log of 82. And now we're going to use our power property. And our power property says that we can take the exponent and we can write it out front. Now what we have is we have 2x log of 6 equals log of 82. Well, eventually what we want to figure out is what does x equal? And it's 2x times log of 6. So let's divide by log of 6. When we divide both sides by log of 6, this part cancels out. Log of 6 divided by log of 6 is 1. And we have 2x. And over here, we're going to type it in. Log of 82 divided by log of 6. Log of 82. Close the parentheses. Divided by log of 6 gives us that number. Now, I'm going to look at this number, and I'm going to write down something, but keep this number in your calculator, because we do not want to round until the very end. I'm going to write down 2.459. And it's 2x equals 2.549. Well, we need to divide both sides by 2 to finish this problem. But remember that 2.549, it's in our calculator. So we're going to pull our calculator back up. We're going to divide by 2. we get this number, and this number here is going to help us determine what our answer to this problem is. We're going to look at the 7 to determine what to do to the 9. And what happens here is that we're going to round that 9 to a 0. But because we round that 9 to a 0, we also have to round that 2 to a 3. It's like rounding the number 29 to 30. And what we end up with is we end up with 1.230.